This is the story of the most powerful and ruthless king of a dystopian world being reincarnated into a medieval isekai world. As he opens his eyes as a newborn, he finds his mother and father looking at him with love and joy. The parents comment on how their newborn child has facial features similar to their own and are overjoyed by the arrival of their newest family member. The father, Reynolds, maims his son Arthur and immediately wants Arthur to call him Papa. However, the mother, Alice, thinks Arthur is too young for that. While the two young parents are goofing around with their new child, Arthur wonders who these two people are and why they are claiming to be his parents. If they really are who they claim to be, that would mean he somehow died in his previous life and has been reborn with his memories intact. Arthur looks at the starry night sky, not believing that after his countless victories and world domination, he's been reduced by the gods to a powerless infant. He is embarrassed, to say the least, and the fact that he has to go through the process of burping is giving him second-hand embarrassment. Arthur doesn't hate his current life, as both his parents are taking good care of him, but he is still displeased. He doesn't want to wear diapers, and he also has a constant sense of fear that someone might hurt him. All he can do to keep his guard up is clench his fist. Arthur's father notices this and uses the opportunity to place his finger under Arthur's hand to show his wife how much their son loves him. Arthur struggles to move, and as he presses too hard, he poops himself, and now his mom has to be the one to clean him. The embarrassment almost makes Arthur want to cry. He wants this bizarre dream to end, but unfortunately, this is the harsh reality he must face from now on. Putting that aside, Arthur witnesses something even stranger. His dad is able to conjure magic and use it to boost his strength. His mom also possesses magic and uses it to heal his dad, making Arthur wonder how magic works, as it is a power he has been unfamiliar with in his past life. He is genuinely fascinated by magic and wants to see more. To do so, he realizes he must grow up first. Meanwhile, his dad enters the forest and subjugates a beast using his strengthening magic. Soon after, his group of friends visits him to hang out. Let me tell you, they will all play an important role in the later story. Back to Arthur, since he has nothing else to do. He examines his surroundings and absorbs as much knowledge as possible, because universally, knowledge is power. Reynolds comes back home after the hunting session, and Arthur wonders if he is now in a society where every single individual is allowed to own weapons. If this is the case, it means there is a level of danger outside that has made it so. Arthur believes it's only reasonable for him to obtain powers as quickly as he can to adapt to this world. Arthur has many questions, which he unfortunately cannot ask yet. But despite all his frustrations, he still feels happy because he gets to have wholesome, priceless moments with his parents. In his previous life, Arthur didn't even have the freedom to sleep peacefully because his enemies tried to assassinate him every night. Now that he is finally experiencing peace, he becomes accustomed to his new life. After days, weeks, and perhaps months, he learns to crawl and quickly makes his way to the mirror to see how good he looks. After getting used to crawling and gaining good control over his limbs, Arthur sneaks out of his bed whenever his parents aren't around and heads to the library. There, he grabs a book, wanting to learn more about this world, and discovers that the continent he was born in is called Dicathan. Dicathan contains 3 kingdoms. The Darv Kingdom, where dwarves reside, the Elanoir Kingdom, where elves rule deep within a forest, and finally, the Sapin Kingdom, where humans live, including Arthur. Arthur's nation is a monarchy, but the throne is inherited, unlike his previous world, where anyone could seize the throne by killing the previous king. After gathering basic information about this world, Arthur looks for a book on magic, and in a very cute way, grabs it off the shelf. After getting the book from the shelf, Arthur begins to reminisce on how more developed his previous life was compared to this one. The book he had taken from the shelf was to make him understand why this is so. He intends to study magic, which the people of this world referred to as Mama. This can only be passed down from generations to generations and can be seen in just 1 out of 100 people. Furthermore, only 2 forms of mana exist in the world, and they are augmenting, which involves enhancing the body's abilities with mana, and conjuring, which involves projecting mana and controlling it however the conjurer pleases. While reading this, he is reminded of his mother's abilities earlier, which clearly proves that she is a conjurer. Although every person that possesses mana has a mana core, which most spellcasters tap into at the beginning of puberty. When they do this well and master it, they can now become mages. Having read this, Arthur believes it is similar to the concept of Kai, which he is very familiar with. However, he is skeptical about whether this knowledge would serve as a weapon for him, being the wannabe kung fu warrior he is. At that moment, he channels his inner Kai and is about to attain a certain level when his mother, Alice, interrupts him. She carries him up like the bay he is and looks at him closely. At first, he thinks she has caught on to his charade. But she soon reveals that he must have shit himself, which he clearly did. The stench. While Alice goes to change his diapers, Arthur is devastated by how much of a prison this body was becoming. He vows to gain more power. Later on, Alice spends time documenting aspects of Arthur's life, and is so pleased with how much he is improving in this world. However, she is bothered about the fact that he has never smiled at them. With "I've thought of this" makes her sad. He looks out the window to find her husband, Ray, teaching Arthur how to use a sword. He is so happy to inform Alice about Arthur's progress, but she is pissed at him for teaching their young son a very harmful skill. "Sorry, ma'am. Women are hard to understand." She believes he is too young to learn how to use a sword and scolds her husband loudly. On the other hand, Arthur watches them closely and uses them as a framework to understand the structure of marriage, even though he is starting to believe that the world they live in could be ruled by women. Later that day, Alice takes Arthur to the market, and he is so thrilled at everything he sees. Every single item he lays his eyes on seems like a lesson to learn for him. Now I understand why babies look around like they know the place, especially items that didn't exist in his previous world. He even got to observe magic up close, which he found very helpful. On the way back, he is gradually falling asleep, but before then, thinks about how helpful his family has been to him. They finally get home and Alice takes him to his room. On the way, she talks about how happy she is whenever he slips out of bed to read and how curious he is whenever they are at the market. She believes he had gotten these qualities from his father, Ray, just like him. She comes to the conclusion that he could end up running off to see the world, but hopes that he would get to live a more peaceful life. That evening, Arthur watches his father do some magic, and is thrilled at the thought of having someone he could learn from closely. He watches his father raise a few rocks from the ground and changes his mind. Before he could get incredibly disappointed, Alice comes around. She assures him that Ray is just getting started and urges him to watch even more closely. At that moment, Ray amplifies his magic and ends up pulling off some advanced skills. Watching him do this, Arthur immediately figures that his father is an augmenter. He gets pumped to do a trick of his own, but his daydream is cut short when his mom informs him that it is now his bedtime. While she carries him to his room, he comes across a book on the shelf and continues to point at him, crying out loudly for her to let him read it. After a brief moment of unleashing his cute face, she is forced to let him read it for a while. Can anyone tell me how this worked? Just as he reads the book, he reminds himself of all the knowledge he has gained in his bid to produce a mana core for himself. He begins to channel all the mana from various points in his body to one point. He does this for a while, and at the time when his parents thought he would probably be asleep, a loud explosion comes from within the house. When this happens, Ray dives quickly to protect his wife and ends up getting his back burned. After verifying that Alice is safe, they both remember that they had left Arthur in the house. Hurriedly, they run into the house and are surprised to their bones when they find Ray floating mid-air. They are left dumbfounded at the sight of this and do nothing but watch him as he descends to the ground. Just as he does so, the roof begins to fall. Since he was just a child, Arthur couldn't move out of the way in time, but his parents swiftly shield him from what could have been his reunion with the underworld. Soon after, they all burst into tears, with Arthur realizing that Alice and Ray would do all they can to keep him safe, a sense of assurance he never got in his past life. We get a glimpse into the past life of Arthur, who was once known as King Grey. Back then, a royal servant was caught attempting to assassinate him. By law, the man should have been executed without question. But instead, the king's council decided to exile him to his home country along with his entire family. Fully aware that a fate far worse than death awaited them there, the assailant, desperate and terrified, begged Gray to spare his family. Yet Gray, showing no mercy, slaughtered the man's wife and daughter right before his eyes. Not out of vengeance, though, but as an act of mercy. A chilling display of just how cold-blooded he truly was. So it's almost unbelievable to think that Arthur, this innocent-looking kid, is the same person who once ruled with such heartless resolve. Right now, Arthur is spending time with his father Ray, who gifts him a pair of identical combat gloves like his own. But Arthur turns them down, choosing to stick with his wooden sword instead. He believes that with his current physique, wearing the gloves would shorten his reach too much and put him at a disadvantage. Ray doesn't argue or insist. Instead, he smiles and casually steps into their usual sparring session. But today isn't like the others. Mid-fight, Arthur reveals he's learned how to reinforce his sword with mana, and with that sudden reveal, he completely disarms Ray. For the first time in his life, Arthur wins, leaving Ray stunned, speechless, and completely caught off guard by his son's rapid growth. Later at dinner, Ray decides to get Arthur a proper instructor, having realized that he will be hindering his son's progress if he doesn't. Arthur's mom Alice stands against this decision as she knows that getting Arthur an instructor means he'll have to leave their hillside home and go far to the city alone at the young age of 4. Ray still insists, telling Alice that Arthur is now able to enhance anything with magic, and states that it's for his future. Both parents go back and forth on the matter and end up in a big argument at the dinner table. So, Arthur comes up with a simple solution to create a win-win situation for both of them, and proposes that they both come along with him to the city. This way, Ray gets to have Arthur trained by a proper tutor, and Alice gets to have her little boy by her side at all times. Arthur's parents instantly agree and start packing immediately for their move to the city. Not long after, Ray's friend group, an adventuring party called the Two Horns, comes personally to escort Arthur and his family to the city. Arthur introduces himself to them, and to their leader Adam, who tells Arthur that they've met in the past, but assumes a kid like Arthur wouldn't remember. However, Arthur does remember everything crystal clear. It was back when he blew up the entire house. At that time, the Two Horns came to help rebuild it, and Arthur overheard their entire conversation, learning that his parents were once part of the Two Horns before settling down. Anyway, when Adam finishes speaking with Arthur, Angela steps in, giving Arthur a tight hug, leaving no room for him to breathe. Durden, the tank of the group, notices the kid's struggle and pulls him away from Angela. That's when Arthur notices a young lady staring at him from the top of the carriage. She is Jasmine, seemingly not that friendly, who only silently watches Arthur from the distance. Arthur gets lost in her eyes when Helen approaches, shakes his hand, and introduces herself and Jasmine on her stead. With the introduction of the Two Horns coming to an end, the journey to Xyrus City begins. Arthur quietly comments to himself how primitive this transportation system is compared to his old world, where flying cars were the norm. Still, he doesn't think it's terrible though, especially with his ever-caring mom by his side on the journey. They take several breaks every day, and during one of them, a pack of wild wolf monsters attacks, making Arthur realize firsthand how dangerous the outside world truly is. Jasmine steps up to fight the wolves and, using her daggers, effortlessly takes them down. Ray, Adam, and the other members of the Two Horns join the battle, and soon after, they handle the situation. Arthur, as the only spectator, becomes motivated by his companions and begins to look forward to joining them in their next fight. They have a feast later that night when Arthur notices that Alice isn't eating anything at all. She claims she's full, but something feels off. She notices an injury on Ray's arm and immediately gets up to heal him. As she does, the atmosphere shifts. The group becomes cautious, subtly guarding the area to ensure no outsiders are watching. It becomes clear to Arthur they are only taking precautions because healing magic is rare and highly sought after in this world. Apparently, the sole reason Ray and Alice have been living alone in the scarce hillside is to keep Alice's healing abilities hidden from prying eyes. After the feast, Adam borrows Arthur from his parents, wanting to spar with the boy to see if he's really as skilled as Ray claims. The rest of the group is just as curious about the child prodigy's potential, so they gather around, creating an unexpected crowd. Arthur, only 4 years old, wonders if none of them are even slightly worried about him. Regardless, this marks Arthur's first sparring match against someone other than his father, and unlike Ray, who only used a wooden stick, Adam is wielding a real spear, albeit covered with bandages. As soon as the duel begins, Adam wastes no time enhancing his spear with mana. Arthur responds by doing the same, but takes it a step further, channeling mana into his feet to boost his speed dramatically. In a sudden blur, he darts forward, landing the first hit before Adam can react. Right after, he slides cleanly between Adam's legs and creates distance, leaving the entire group speechless at his incredible speed and precision. The fight intensifies. They clash head-on, but the power gap becomes undeniable. Arthur, with no raw strength, is completely and quite literally is blown away by Adam's strike. The impact sends him flying, and he instantly realizes just how light and fragile his current body is for direct combat. Before he can hit the ground too hard, Angela uses her wind magic to gently lower him down, softening the fall. Durden quickly steps in, reprimanding Adam for going too far against a little kid, reminding him that he was supposed to hold back. Adam raises his hands in defense, admitting he got carried away, but only because Arthur's technique caught him completely off guard. Deep down, he's left wondering what kind of hellish training Ray put this kid through to turn him into such a monster at just 4 years old. Turning to the side, he finds Jasmine looking at him weirdly. She wishes to know how he just pulled that off and pleads with him to teach her how to do it. Seeing the blank expression on her face, he comes to the conclusion that she will not back down until she gets what she wants. The next morning, they all continue on their journey, and soon take a stop at a quiet area for Arthur to continue with his training. Adam teaches him how to use a spear, while his father pulls up some gym bro moves, even though the weakling was just a weakling. After that, Helen teaches him some archery, and he becomes a pro in a short time. With all his training done for the day, he proceeds to give Jasmine the lessons she demanded for, and she proves to be a fast learner. Later that night, while he is reading a book, Jasmine continues to stare at him like she is lost in his non-existent handsomeness. Soon after, she becomes like a stalker. The next day happens to be Arthur's birthday, and Jasmine hands him a dagger as a gift. To the surprise of the other ladies, she even began explaining how to use the dagger to him. Having gotten enough of their child's play, and being a pained single man, Adam announces that they would be heading out now. When his mother, Alice, calls him over, he discovers that she is not feeling so well. When he asks her what the problem is, she assures him that she is fine, even though he doesn't buy her bullshit. As they continue on their journey, they soon get attacked by bandits along the way. When this happens, they all jump down from the carriage and take their stance in defense. The bandits rain down arrows on them, but Angela shields them from it with her magic barrier. Looking outside, Arthur figures that they are largely surrounded. On the other hand, the leader of the bandits, with a cube-shaped head, orders his men not to harm the women and children since he intends to sell them for a good price. Just then, the bandits charge aggressively at them, and Alicia, who clearly is scared, tries to make Arthur stay calm. Before the bandits could get any closer to them, Durden blasts them away, while Ray swiftly punches them. One of the bandits is about to strike Ray when Helen shoots an arrow through his wicked heart. Furthermore, Adam slices past the bandits with his spear, while Jasmine strikes them with her daggers. Watching them do all this makes Arthur acknowledge that the members of the Twin Horns party are individually skilled. However, since the bandits outnumber them greatly, they stand no chance. After fighting for a while, they all become exhausted, while the bandits keep coming at them. Soon enough, the bandits slam Ray into the carriage and he lies unconscious. This allows the ugly bandit leader to get closer to Alice and Arthur. Seeing Ray in this state, the two run out of the carriage, but at this time, Ray regains consciousness and asks that they step back. Even in his obviously beat-up state, he still decides to be the man. He asks Arthur to take his mother and run away. Hearing this, the coolest dummy insists on staying and joining them to fight, but his father reveals that his mother is pregnant. This leaves him with the answers to the suspicions he had had since about why his mother looked like she was sick. Meanwhile, Ray asks that he leave immediately and states his trust that Arthur would protect his mother and unborn brother. Hurriedly, Arthur grabs Alicia and starts running away with her. Angrily, the largemouth bandits' leader orders his men to stop them. But Ray comes charging at him when it seemed like Arthur and Alicia would get caught. Adam and Jasmine throw knives at the bandits to clear the way for them. Soon, all the members of the party join hands to help Arthur and Alicia escape while they face the bandits head-on. While running away, Arthur reminisces on the fact that he was once one who stole many souls and has now become someone who is scared of having his own soul taken away from him. The mere thought of this leaves him angry, but his tiny feet have nothing to do about it but run for his sorry life. After running for a while, Arthur senses an incoming attack from the mountains and looks up to see a suspicious man about to strike them with his magic. He immediately pushes his mother away and in the process gets hit by the magic, which causes him to lose balance and fall off the mountain. On his way down, he is determined not to arrive at the underworld alone. He makes use of the dagger Jasmine had given him, which had a string attached to it, and throws it at the enemy. The dagger grabs onto the leg of the enemy and pulls him down from the top of the mountain. While this is going on, Durden and Angela try to use their magic to save Arthur, but he is too far away for it to reach him before he falls to the ground. As he descends to the ground, Arthur begins to think about his existence, while his mother watches him from the top with her hand stretched wide, hoping she can grab him. The thought of losing her son causes her to shed tears, but Arthur, on the other hand, is fulfilled that he got to protect his own family, even if it cost him his life, although he is sad that he won't get to be a big brother like he wished he would. Surprisingly, Arthur survives the fall and wakes up to find himself in the presence of a very large and fierce-looking monster. This leaves him incredibly scared. The sight of the monster leaves Arthur completely petrified and unable to speak. Arthur, suspecting that the monster has lured him here, tries to strike her, but she simply pushes him away with a flick of her fingers. She assures him that she's not his enemy, and gets up, gathering some magical fruits from a mysterious plant that she's grown herself to feed Arthur, assuming he needs food and nutrition to heal his wounds. Arthur can't believe that this scary monster is acting like a caring mother towards him. He is skeptical of her intentions, but as his wounds continue to hurt, not allowing him to move, he starts crying uncontrollably. The monster lady promises Arthur that she will answer every question in his mind. So Arthur takes the chance and munches down the food. With the condition fulfilled, he asks her if his parents are safe, and she claims that although she is unable to leave the cave, with her spatial awareness, she has confirmed that Arthur's family defeated all of the bandits and left this place a couple of days ago. Arthur is relieved to hear that his mom, dad, and his soon-to-be-born sister are safe, and he thanks the monster lady for saving his life. He doesn't know what to call her, neither do we, so she introduces herself as Sylvia, and it looks like Sylvia is hiding some deep secrets. Arthur spends the next few days under Sylvia's care, continuing to eat the fruits which accelerate his recovery and completely heal his wounds. Now that he's able to move, he wishes to return home, but according to Sylvia, they are in the territory of deadly beasts and bandits, and if Arthur goes alone, he wouldn't survive a single day out there. Still, Sylvia comes up with a way for him to leave, as she can't bear to see this child separated from his family. Using the last of her magical powers, she begins preparing to open a dimensional rift. In the meantime, Arthur spends his days practicing swordsmanship. He keeps wondering to himself what secrets this hideous-looking monster is hiding from him, why she's so caring towards him, and what's the reason behind the hole on her chest. But since she never speaks about herself, he has no way of knowing. After training, he meditates to enhance his mana core, which piques Sylvia's interest. She then shows him something even more fascinating, a method to gather mana from the surroundings while simultaneously using magic. Sylvia explains how people's fixed concept of mana has created the problem of collecting and using it separately. She points out that many beings like her can do both at the same time, eliminating the issue of mana depletion altogether. She adds that magical beasts can perform this technique as naturally as breathing. She then asks Arthur if he wants to learn this ability, and of course, Arthur doesn't hesitate to answer with an enthusiastic yes. But before teaching him, she asks one question. Why does he want this ability? Arthur answers honestly. He tells her that obtaining this power will make him stronger, and with that strength, he wants to bring death to anyone who dares to harm his loved ones. His naive answer earns him yet another flick on the forehead. Sylvia tells him he's failed. She refuses to teach someone who is driven by hatred. But Arthur believes it's only natural to despise one's enemies. Speaking from the bitter experiences of his past life as the strongest king, Sylvia can sense Arthur's bloodlust and tells him that hurting people is never something one should aspire to. Then, after a pause, she apologizes for flicking him too hard, yet she also reminds him that the same hands capable of destroying him completely can also touch him gently. That's what she wants him to understand. It's better to be kind to others, because anger, hatred, and violence only leave behind pain. She saved his life with compassion, and she doesn't want him to stain that act of kindness with his hatred. As Arthur slowly begins to understand what she's trying to teach him, she asks him another question. What will he use his power for when he becomes stronger? Arthur, recalling the memories of the time he spent with his parents and their friends, responds saying that he wants to become stronger to protect his loved ones, and this time Sylvia approves. Meanwhile, on a nearby cliff, another creature appears who looks exactly like Sylvia. He reveals that he's been searching for Sylvia, who has gone into hiding to stay away from his kingdom. Another flashback takes us into Arthur's past life. This time, he's inside his royal chambers. After waking up in the morning, he heads to the office of one of his subordinates, who is a member of Parliament. Arthur tells him bluntly that he is only the king in name only, and in reality, it's the Parliament that holds all the power. In a world where resources are being exhausted and birth rates are steadily declining, Arthur believes he's merely fulfilling the role assigned to him, that he's just a device of violence. His subordinate tries to calm him down, flattering him with big words. In any case, Arthur leaves, and shortly after, he is mysteriously assassinated. Just as Arthur tries to use the new power that Sylvia has given him, he recalls his former life. In that life, he knew not everyone was fortunate, but all he ever tried to do was unlock the ability to use Kai power. At that moment, the power falls on him completely, and he feels overwhelmed. The question, as always, remains, what will he do with this new power he has just received? As he tries to practice with the energy surging through him, Sylvia suddenly throws him against a rock. He's confused. What is happening? Why is the one who has been taking care of him suddenly hiding him away? She tells him not to be afraid, but that he must remain there for a while. Inside the rock, he witnesses an incredible surge of power. Another creature, one that looks exactly like Sylvia, arrives. This creature had been lurking around, searching for her. Sylvia is shocked that he found her, and he reveals that he followed the smell of blood. He demands she come with him immediately, but she refuses. Sylvia is ready to fight to the death. When the creature moves to attack, she transforms into her true self. The entire area turns icy as she breathes out frost. She is indeed a powerful dragon. Seeing her in this form, the creature warns her that using that kind of power will kill her. But she doesn't care about death. To her, she's lived a graceful life, and she's at peace with dying. So even if it means death, she refuses to surrender to him. They engage in a fierce, terrifying battle, one that Arthur watches helplessly from the cave. He's overwhelmed by the manner of strength they both have. As expected, the creature fights back just as fiercely. It even looks like he's gaining the upper hand, until Sylvia releases her trump card. She freezes the entire area, seizes the creature, and then opens the cave to let Arthur out. When he comes out, he is stunned. He sees her true form. She is a dragon. She opens the sky above and tells him he can now leave. She says she's given him power to help him find his way home. Again, she asks him what he will do with that power. She hopes he won't be consumed by anger or hatred. Arthur answers that he'll use the power to protect his family. She smiles. She doesn't want him to live a life of sadness or hatred, and to her, the power isn't to fight or revenge. Instead, she wishes he will spread love to everyone. His reply makes her deeply moved. Before letting him go, she gives him a dragon egg and a feather, asking him to wrap the egg with the feather. Then she touches him, and he's suddenly filled with an overwhelming flow of energy. A glowing line, like a tattoo, spreads from his fingers down to his arm, his top tears, revealing the line. She admits she could have sent him home earlier. She always knew how. Arthur had thought she kept him there because it was unsafe to return. But she reveals the truth. She loved his company. Having someone to talk to, someone to bond with, was something she hadn't experienced in a long time. His presence had been a precious gift, and he sincerely enjoyed being with her too. He learned a lot from her. It's an emotional goodbye. In tears, Arthur regrets that there's nothing he can do to protect Sylvia. He recalls that she taught him a lot, even gave him strength. She had treated him with such love and care, but he can't even save her despite all she had done for him. He feels sincerely sad. He weeps, remembering the promise he made to her. He feels like he's failed, but all these doesn't matter to her. She had lived a life she is grateful for. But then, with a soft smile, he tells her he doesn't care what she is, whether she's a dragon or a monster. All he knows is that she is family. She teases, asking how he can call her a family when he already has a mother waiting at home. Thinking about it, he smiles and says, "Then you're my grandmother." That single word, grandmother, hits deep. It cuts into her soul. Even for Sylvia, a dragon, the emotion overwhelms her. She begins to cry. She asks him to call her that again. He does. Just as he calls her grandmother, she quietly lies down, content about her life. Arthur takes the egg and the feather she gave him, and the sky opens. It's time to leave, but he doesn't want to go. He begs her to come with him, but she doesn't respond. The opening closes. Just as she leaves, Sylvia releases the sealed world, and her opponent regains strength. She suddenly collapses to the ground, as if she's dead. The creature approaches, wondering if someone as powerful as she is can die with just a small attack. He comes closer, trying to understand, but Sylvia had only played dead. As he draws near, she opens her eyes and releases a massive burst of mana, too powerful for anyone to survive in. The entire cave shakes, the explosion so great it reaches the surface. Meanwhile, in tears, Arthur continues his journey home. Her voice echoes in the sky. She reminds him not to forget their conversations. She knows sadness is natural, but begs him to smile through it. He shouldn't try to fight back or revenge due to sadness, but he doesn't think he has the ability to do that. She advises he shouldn't try to carry the smile at once. He should simply take things one step at a time, changing the world bit by bit. Arthur doubts himself, but she reminds him who he is. He is King Grey, the strongest king. He can do anything. She begs him not to fill his heart with anger and pain, but to live a life of happiness. He is shocked that all these, while she was with him, she was aware of his true nature. It's a moment full of truth and deep emotion. Her voice eventually fades into the wind. Arthur, now back on Earth, carefully places her gifts in his bag. With a new resolve and strength, he starts going home, with the intention to change the world with a smile, one step at a time. Will this resolve last long? Boosting his movement speed with mana, Arthur dashes through the Elshire forest, making sure he doesn't accidentally damage Sylvia's egg. While leaping from one tree to another like a monkey, he suddenly hears the voices of a group of humans. He gets closer to them, hoping the group will lead him to the city where his family is. But just as he lands on the tree above them, he realizes they are actually 4 bandits who have abducted an elf girl to sell her as a slave. Arthur has already faced a similar group a few days ago, who tried to capture him and his mother to sell them both into slavery. Assuming these guys are also affiliated with them, he seeks retribution. Meanwhile, the slave traders shove the elf girl inside their carriage and prepare to leave the forest. Witnessing the entire thing, Arthur is filled with rage, but recalling Sylvia's advice, he calms his nerves and begins following the carriage until evening, when the bandits set up camp for the night. Arthur has the option to play it safe by continuing to follow them to a human town while staying hidden, but if he does that, he'll have to abandon the idea of saving the elf girl. In any case, he waits until midnight before making a move. The bandits are using horned wolves to pull their carriage, and Arthur comes up with a plan to use the wolves to throw the bandits off. He throws rocks at the wolves, causing them to howl loudly. One of the bandits tries to calm the wolves, afraid their howls might attract dangerous creatures to the camp, and begins kicking one of them. Arthur takes this opportunity to sneak up behind the bandit, reinforcing his right hand with mana to make it sharp, and incapacitates the man. He then grabs the bandit's knife and ruthlessly slays the second slave trader. The third bandit senses something off, but before he can react, Arthur slices his leg. The third bandit quickly alerts his leader about the kid mage, but the leader doesn't take it seriously and only sees more money in his future, convinced he'll capture Arthur alive. The bandit leader drops his sword, not wanting to damage his soon-to-be best-selling product, and reinforces his hands with mana before charging at Arthur bare-handed. Arthur dodges the first strike and tries to snatch the leader's weapon using the thread trick he used in his last battle. However, the bandit leader, being far more experienced in combat, sees through Arthur's trick and kicks him away. He then picks Arthur up by the leg like it's nothing, declaring that this is the end. But for Arthur, it's just the beginning. Arthur burns the bandit leader's left leg with a sudden fire spell, enraging him to the point where he now wants Arthur dead, stating he'll just sell the nasty kid's corpse to some creepy collectors. While the bandit leader is busy monologuing, Arthur uses his thread technique to throw his knife, stabbing it straight through the leader's forehead, unaliving him instantly. The third bandit is still alive and begs Arthur to spare him, promising to atone for his sins. But Arthur knows very well that all these pleas are just lies. Plus, he cannot leave behind any witnesses to his crimes, so he finishes him off as well. He then enters the carriage, lifts the blindfold off the scared elf girl, and assures her that she is now safe to return home. She doesn't understand what's going on and gets worried upon noticing that Arthur has injuries all over his body. Arthur realizes that kids aren't used to such brutality, so he quickly covers the corpses of the bandits before the elf girl can see them. He then makes up an excuse, telling her that the bad guys died from some accident, and she, being an actual kid, is instantly convinced. Arthur packs some of the useful items he might need for the rest of his journey and is about to leave, but the elf girl stops him, holding his hand and begging him not to leave her alone in this dangerous forest. She tells Arthur that her parents once told her about tree ghosts that live in this forest and eat children, though in all honesty, those were just stories meant to scare kids into going to sleep. In any case, Arthur realizes he has no choice but to bring the elf girl back to safety. She uses her sense of direction and says her home is toward the south, which happens to be the opposite direction of where Arthur's parents are. Arthur asks her how she got kidnapped, and she explains that she wandered into the forest while chasing butterflies and got lost. Arthur, unsurprised, expected something as ridiculous as that. He recalls a time in his past life when he too was imprisoned at her age, and not wanting her to suffer the same fate, he agrees to escort her back to her home. The elf girl doesn't want to keep using the horned wolves for their travels though, because according to her, they'll die if kept away from their natural life. She bravely removes their restraints, and the wolves quietly return to the depths of the wilderness, back to where they belong. Arthur is glad to have saved such a kind-hearted girl and feels even more determined to return her home safely. The very next morning, the two brave kids begin their journey through the forest on foot, and Arthur finally decides to ask the elf girl her name. The elf girl introduces herself as Tessia. She then asks Arthur his name, and he tells her. As they continue walking, he figures she must be hungry, so he hands her a bowl, sits her down, and tells her to eat. Even if she isn't hungry, he says, it's best to eat for the sake of her body. She still has a long walk ahead. The moment reminds him of Sylvia, who had once told him the same. Eat even when you're not hungry, because you need the strength to move. He catches himself talking just like her and smiles. Who can blame him? When you spend a lot of time with someone, you start picking up their mannerisms. After serving Tessia the meal, she grumbles, complaining that it smells weird. Really? Someone rescues you and gives you food, and you complain? Typical kid behavior. He tells her he'll add leaves to make it better, but it's still not to her taste. He realizes he never truly had a childhood. Meals, for him, were about nourishment, not taste. Watching her makes him understand what childhood is and how it works. She whines about wanting something sweet, but there's no chance she's getting that out here. Their journey continues, and honestly, it's an interesting one. He asks about her city, and she shows him the mana she was chasing, saying there's plenty of it back home. She also says she can't wait to awaken her mana so she can study under her master. Arthur's surprised. He didn't know elves had schools. And when he asks, she doesn't seem to get the question. They walk until nightfall, and he sets up a tent for her to sleep in. He hears the howls of the horned wolves he'd released earlier, and worries they might attack. He regrets not killing them when he had the chance. Tessia enters the tent and tells him to sleep too. But being the protective big brother he is, he insists on staying outside to keep watch. She argues, saying her grandfather told her not to sleep in the same room as the opposite gender, but she'll make an exception. She promises to keep it a secret. When he still refuses, she comes back out, scared. She claims that if he stays out, whatever danger he's protecting her from might notice and find her too. So, for her comfort, he agrees to sit inside. Inside the tent, she starts chatting about humans, how they're perverted and have many wives. Wow. He tries to set the record straight, but she falls asleep. Eventually, he does too. The next day, their journey continues. From leaping across mountains to walking on water, he's proving to be a solid big brother. Being with her makes him realize what it means to be childlike. Still, the journey feels long, and honestly, he's starting to worry about his parents. Meanwhile, Tessia's gotten comfortable around him. She chats freely. Along the way, Arthur suddenly feels a sharp pain in his mana core. Tessia thinks he's just tired and rushes off to get herbs while he leans against a wall. The pain intensifies. And then, one of the horned wolves approaches. Terrible timing. Tessia returns with what she calls herbs. Arthur, ever the big brother, shouts at her to run. He assumes the wolf is ever ready to attack them, but the wolf doesn't attack. Instead, it drops meat from its mouth and walks off. Tessia smiles happily, saying, "That's the reward of being a good kid." Have they really being good kids? They cook the meat, and after one bite, Tessia is overjoyed. It tastes far better than the strange meal from earlier. Indeed, when a child sees a good meal, they appreciate it happily. When Arthur tries it, he finally understands why kids prefer sweet food. It tastes so good that he wishes he had also eaten such before. She tells him she found mushrooms instead of herbs, and that women in her city eat them often. He lets his guard down and takes a bite. Big mistake. He ends up rushing to the toilet multiple times. That taste? Awful. He has a very intense stomach upset that he can't handle. Night falls and they return to the tent. His eyelid is closing as he is tired and stressed out. He wishes to sleep, but Tessia's full of stories, from books about humans and dwarves that she had read growing up to her dreams of meeting them. But she can't, she says, because she's heard humans are terrible, so she didn't know what to do. Arthur dozes off mid-conversation, and Tessia, like a sweet little sister, covers him with a cloth. The next morning, they set off again. Arthur's exhausted but hides it with a smile so she won't worry. Even when she asks him if he is tired, he lies to her that he is still very strong, when even the blind can see he is weak. As they approach her village, she asks to give him a nickname, Artie. He calls her Your Royal Highness in return. She doesn't take the joke as she should and says she was just trying to make him feel like a friend. Friendship is something he has barely experienced before, so I can't blame his reaction. She walks ahead and spots an opening. He doesn't notice at first, but she calls his attention to it. He doesn't know what it is. Before he knows it, she's hanging at its edge, calling for him to join her, with her hands stretched out. In that moment, he's confused. Should he go with her or turn back home? He grabs her hand and follows her in. They arrive on the other side and he lays on the floor weak. Before he can fully recover, armed guards surround him. They say they tracked them through the teleportation hole. Suddenly, they seize him and hold a sword to his neck. He shouts for Tessia, only to see her standing still, expressionless. What's happening? Could his kindness really end in betrayal? The guards demand Arthur to explain who allowed a human like him to enter their sacred land. Arthur turns to Tessia, hoping she'll clarify the situation, but as she remains silent, Arthur feels betrayed, feeling stupid for ever thinking of her as a friend. But it turns out Tessia was only hesitating to speak because she's still a child, and as the guards announce that they'll be unaliving Arthur, she finally steps in, vouching for him and stating that he saved her life. However, the guards stick to the assumption that Arthur has somehow brainwashed Tessia into believing she was saved by him. Yeah, right. In any case, the only wise and sane man of the Elven lands steps in, emerging from the same teleportation portal, and orders the guards to let Arthur go. This man is Virian Aerolith, the former king of Elenoir, and he personally thanks Arthur for saving Tessia, revealing that she's his granddaughter, which means she's the princess of this kingdom. Arthur is completely stunned by the revelation, since he never imagined Tessia could be royalty, judging by the way she acted during their time together. Tessia's parents, the king and Queen Alduin, and Mariel Erelith, arrive moments later and are finally reunited with their missing daughter after days of separation. While Mariel checks to make sure her daughter is okay, Alduin questions what a human is doing here. It seems Alduin inherited his mother's IQ and isn't nearly as wise as his father, because he immediately orders his soldiers to unalive Arthur. Virion steps in again, stating that he was the one who ordered the guards to stand down, and he explains to Alduin that Arthur saved their precious Tessia despite being a so-called barbaric human. Tessia supports Virion's statement, pleading with her father not to harm her friend, and even proposes that they invite him to their castle. The thought of a human stepping foot inside their castle clearly makes Alduin hesitate, but Tessia doesn't wait for his answer and walks right up to Arthur, telling him that if he comes along, their royal chefs will make him his favorite snacks. Yeah, those types of bribes only work on toddlers. Well, Arthur is technically a toddler, so whatever. Alduin doesn't want to upset his sassy daughter, so he agrees as well. Meanwhile, Virion's curiosity is piqued to the max, sensing Arthur's mysterious power, and so he asks Arthur to talk with him later in private. For now, Arthur tags along with Tessia and walks through the kingdom of Elenoir, an artistically structured society where houses are built both on and beneath the trees, and the people live simple yet peaceful lives. As Arthur walks beside Tessia, he draws a lot of attention from the crowd, all of whom are curious about what a human is doing here. Arthur can't move past the fact that Tessia hesitated to help him at first. Why would she do that? And what was with that stern expression on her face back then? He doesn't understand it, and the thought continues to bother him, triggering a sharp pain in his chest. In any case, he remains suspicious of everything around him and is doing his best to stay alert and not let his guard down. They reach the castle at the end of the city, and as they enter, they are welcomed by dozens of elven maids, whose sole duty is to make sure Tessia is always happy. However, today Tessia wants to repay Arthur, so she orders all of her maids to give him the best hospitality he could ever receive, telling them that he saved her life. Seeing them act reluctant, Tessia assures them that Arthur is one of the rare humans who are truly good at heart. She then turns to Arthur and asks what he wants to do: eat snacks, play, have lunch, or maybe get freshened up. But before doing any of that, Arthur wants to talk to Tessia's parents about what happened in the forest, since nothing has been explained yet. He gathers everyone in the meeting room to have a serious discussion, but Tessia is in her own little world and brings tea and snacks for everyone, perhaps thinking this is more of a tea party than anything else. Anyway, Alduin formally introduces himself, his wife Mariel, and his father Virion to Arthur. And Arthur too introduces himself as just an average kid born in a backwater village in the kingdom of Sapien. He kneels before Alduin, admitting that a commoner like him would never have the chance to see royalty, let alone sit in the same room as the Elven King, and he expresses how grateful he is to have been given this opportunity. Alduin finds it surprising how well-educated Arthur is, despite claiming to be born a peasant, but he allows him to continue. Arthur then gives a detailed explanation of what happened, including how he got separated from his family. He doesn't lie to the king, but he also doesn't tell the full truth either, like his encounter with the mysterious dragon, Sylvia. Regardless, as he moves his story forward to the point where he found Tessia being kidnapped by a group of slave traders, the mood in the room changes. Once again, Alduin seizes the chance to blame all of humanity for what the slave traders tried to do to his daughter. On the other hand, Virion asks the real question: how did a 5-year-old like Arthur manage to rescue Tessia from 3 grown slave traders? It couldn't have been through negotiation or begging, so Arthur finally reveals the truth. He states that he's a talented mage and used his powers to eliminate the slave traders. However, Alduin finds it hard to believe, and the same guard from earlier once again throws in his unwanted opinion, claiming Arthur must have brainwashed Tessia just to get into their sacred land. Virion, who has been vouching for Arthur from the very beginning, no longer tolerates the disrespect thrown at him indirectly and immediately shuts the guard down. Tessia also steps up, adding that she heard the slave traders talking about selling her for a high price, recalling the traumatic experience. After Tessia finishes narrating what she had gone through before she was saved by Arthur, her mother gets emotional and hugs her tightly. A mother's love is always so wholesome and beautiful. Alduin also realizes what his daughter had gone through, so he tells Arthur that he believes him and appreciates all he has done for him. After explaining how he met Tessia, he goes to the exact reason why he had asked for that conversation. He tells them he was also missing from his family, and all he wants at the moment is to be reunited with his parents at Sapin. Alduin can't believe his ears. Is Arthur really asking that elves help humans that they believe are barbaric? Alduin insists there is no way he will render any help to humans, and Arthur has to understand that he has to find his way home. You can trust the smart Arthur to think of the way forward. He reminds Alduin of what he has done for their family and their city, and says that if they don't help him in return after what he has done for them, then they are also barbaric, and they don't have any right to call humans barbaric since they have the exact same behavior. Virion looks at Alduin with a face that screams, "You have been caught." He tells Alduin that he has been caught in his own web, and Tessia also stands beside her father, staring at him to know what decision he will make eventually. Alduin has no choice at this point. He accepts to help Arthur, but informs him that the only teleportation gate that leads to Sapin can only be opened once in 7 years after meeting with the 3 leaders. They have recently used it, so the next time it can be opened is in 5 years. Arthur doesn't have that luxury of time. He can't wait 5 years before reuniting with his family. Alduin suspects that too, so he says he will ask soldiers to escort Arthur home, so their journey will start the next day. Arthur feels better hearing that, but his mana core suddenly starts hurting again. He struggles to leave the meeting and goes to have his bath. The pain doesn't subside and continues. After his bath, he holds his chest tightly, wondering what could be the cause of his pain and the solution to it. He thinks about Sylvia and asks her what he should do about that pain. Unfortunately, the answer isn't coming anytime soon. He takes a walk around the palace, and the fresh air he is getting makes his pain reduce a little. He thinks about his parents and how much he misses them. He wonders if they are still alive, but concludes that they are too strong to die that easily. So, he is sure they are fine. When he looks up and sees Tessia with her parents, he wonders if his family will also receive him that happily, or if they will be angry with him for leaving them for so long. All these thoughts overwhelm this poor boy, so he stands lost. Tessia runs to meet him. He teases her by calling her a pampered princess and asks her to go and enjoy the comfort of her parents. He confides in her about the worries he has about his parents and if he will be welcomed by them. She holds his cheek, wondering how petty he can be. "What do you mean your parents won't be glad you are back?" she wonders. Parents are always worried about their children, and she is sure his parents are presently worried about him too. As she holds him, shiny bellflowers fall down on them. She looks at them and tells him what they are. Seeing her look like that, he remembers when he entered the city and thought she wanted to betray him because of her look, but he is glad she didn't repay him with evil. However, those flowers look familiar to him. He returns to his thoughts, wondering what he is seeing. What she sees as a flower isn't a flower to him. It is a weapon. He has seen them during those days when he was still fighting. He apologizes to her, and she wonders what he means. He says he likes the flowers too, then throws back the flower, which he assumes is a weapon, to the person that has sent it. To his shock, the sender was no one else but Virion. He asks why Virion is attacking his own granddaughter. However, Virion smiles at him, asking if someone can be attacked by something like that. Tessia comes to meet Virion, begging him to leave Arthur alone and saying that Arthur is actually a good boy and he isn't like other humans. She begs that he stop bullying him. Virion doesn't take that as bullying. He says he has seen someone interesting for the first time in his life, and he won't let the person go. He magically sends Tessia to sit and brings a stick so he can have a duel with Arthur. Who will win this fight? The fight starts, and Arthur does his absolute best. He uses all his mana to fight, but notices that Virion is faster than him. No matter how hard he tries, he can't even get to hit Virion at all. When he makes a hard attempt, Virion breaks his stick, and a piece of the stick almost hits Tessia, but he protects her. He decides to use magic. The magic he uses is so strong that only a few people can survive it. But guess who repels his magic? It's Virion. After several attempts, he successfully gets to hit Virion on his head. Virion is shocked, but that only gets him more excited to fight. He asks Arthur for a second round of fight, but Tessia stands from where she is kept and tickles his butt, telling him to leave her Artie alone. He claims Arthur isn't the child Tessia thinks he is, and if there is someone that bullied themselves in that fight, then it was Arthur that bullied him. Arthur doesn't want this cap for himself. He claims Virion is overestimating him. Virion asks him to be his disciple. It may be a good idea to him, and to be fair, he is also considering it. However, when he thinks about his parents and how they aren't sure he is fine, he decides it isn't a good deal. He tells Virion about his concerns, but Virion informs him there is a way he can inform his parents that he is fine and well without having to go home. He tries to inquire better, and Virion releases something into his body. He starts feeling pain in his mana again, and this confirms what Virion had suspected earlier, which is the fact that he had gotten the Beast Will. He tells Arthur that the only way he will survive and not die is if he becomes his disciple. This is a tough choice for Arthur. What will be his decision eventually?